She was the it girl, the iconic golden girl of the silver screen. Even with a life filled with glamour, chaos, rumors, and some pretty nasty scandals, Clara Bow would be the most iconic actress of the silent film and pre-code era. Then, she would be completely forgotten. In this video, I'm going to talk about who she was, the scandals, why she was forgotten, how we rediscovered her, and her incredibly iconic style. If you want to find out more about this amazing actress, keep watching. Hello and welcome to Killer Kitsch Lizzie, my weird little world where I like to knit and sew and do other crafty things. In this video, we're going to be talking about probably my absolutely all-time favorite, not just silent film, but pre-code era actress, Clara Bow. I got my handy dandy notes to make sure I stay on track. And here we go. Clara Bow was an American actress who rose to major stardom during the silent cinema era. She's most likely the most popular actress of that time, or at least during that time, the most recognizable. Apparently, now this is apparently, or this is allegedly, I think is the better word, that she received up to 45,000 fan mail letters every single month. And for someone whose life did not start out very well, to go from living in poverty and a very dysfunctional family life to huge stardom. Well, it's probably a story you've heard a lot about during the silent cinema and then the pre-code era, but Clara Bow's story is sort of the epitome of that rags to riches story. Clara was born on July 29th, 1905, close to my birthday. And now there is some discrepancy around the year she was born. It goes anywhere in documents, believe it or not, from 1903 to 1912. The 1912 one is kind of like, who wrote that one? Because she was starting work in the mid-1920s as a silent cinema actress, so was she 10? Anyway, so, but it's more believable that it's somewhere between 1903 and 1905, and the majority of documents say 1905, so that's what they've stuck with. So she was born in New York City during a horrendous heat wave, and temperatures got around to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or here, 38 Fahrenheit, or sorry, 38 Celsius here. And years later, she would be quoted as saying, "I don't suppose two people ever looked death in the face more clearly than my mother and I. The morning I was born, we were both given up and somehow struggled back to life." And Clara was always a fighter, and that's going to become more evident as I talk about her. By the time Clara was 4.5, her father was out of work and struggling to keep a job, any kind of regular employment, and that caused tremendous strain on her family, as well as, and you're going to hear a lot of stories about this more into the Great Depression, where if anyone, like if they're living in poverty, if they cannot find work, it was either out of just not wanting to live up to the responsibilities, or sometimes it was just humiliation. The men would just take off. and they would just leave the mother and the children to fend for themselves. And Clara Bow's father was not an exception to this rule, and he did take off on them, and he would take off, he'd come back, he'd take off, he'd come back, and eventually he came back to stay to a certain degree. That family was very unstable, and they had a really difficult time getting by day to day. Then fast forward to when Clara was 16, her mother Sarah fell from a second-story window, and she ended up suffering from very severe head injuries, and the information about how she fell from that window is not clear. There are suggestions of certain things, but nothing has been confirmed or like very clear about, you know, how she fell out that window. And because of her head injuries, she was eventually diagnosed with psychosis, and that was, she would be having seizures, and that was due to her, you know, she ended up having epilepsy, and because of that, you know, she would become difficult to live with and dangerous. And there was a point in February of 1922, during one of her epileptic seizures, and probably one of the worst ones, she held a knife to Clara's throat and threatened her life. And at this point, Clara had started showing interest in and was starting to look for work as an actress, something that both of her parents did not want her to do. And it is suggested that the combination of the seizure and her mother's knowledge of Clara wanting to be an actress, which was not considered a very savory, or sorry, it was considered a very unsavory profession to a lot of people. And because of this, they think all of that was a factor in why she threatened her daughter. And so what happened was Clara's father, Robert Bow, eventually had his wife institutionalized in a sanitarium. And it has been written many times that Clara was a lonely child. She didn't have very many friends, and according to some sources, girls in her school actually bullied her because of how beautiful she was. And she was a very beautiful child. And so because of this, you know, Clara would keep to herself. She didn't attempt to make friends and became very introverted herself. Maybe not shy, but like just, you know, came into herself and just like didn't seek out other children. So Clara, because she wasn't seeing other children or playing with other children, her actual escape from her home life and from the poverty that was happening around her was she would go to the movies. And being in that theater, and I totally get it. I mean, there was a point in my life where I was a kid and I was like, I want to be an actress. And I did attempt at one point in my life when I was very young. And yeah, it's just that there's something about sitting in a theater and watching a movie, like watching actors on the screen, the cinematography, the clothing. There's something about that that draws you in, and many people visualize themselves as being an actor, and Clara was one of those people. She wanted to be famous and she wanted to be on the big screen. And one of the ways that she thought would be her way in was in 1921, she entered a contest. And it was a national acting contest called Fame and Fortune. And previous winners of that contest did find work in film. And Clara thought that she could win this. And she did win. She ended up winning the main prize, and in that prize, she was offered or guaranteed the offer of movie roles, but unfortunately, that wasn't happening. She was not getting all of this work that she was promised. So at this point, Clara's father's tune completely changed. He's an opportunist, and he's now seeing that his daughter could potentially make him a lot of money. So he starts pushing her, and he is saying, be persistent, keep going to those offices and keep bugging them, and make sure that they live up to that prize and that they give you the roles that they promised you. And eventually this persistence pays off big time. She wears them down, and they end up offering her role in a movie called Beyond the Rainbow. And that was later on in 1921. She works on the movie, but unfortunately her scenes get cut. Now, a lot of other actors would have completely given up at this point. They won a contest, they had to fight to get the prize, and then the scenes that they were in get cut. But Clara was not one of those people. She was determined. She was going to be famous, and she was going to do whatever it took to make sure she was. And now Robert Bow, realizing how much his daughter wanted to be an actress, he's like saying he's fully supporting her. He's attempting to manage her career, and his support does actually motivate her to seek out agents or studio agents. Go in and go harass them until they give her roles. And she got turned down quite a bit. She'd be told she was not pretty enough. She was too short. She was too fat. She was too stocky. Now, Clara was petite. I would not say she was stocky or fat. She just was not, in their eyes, fitting the slender ingenue that the producers and directors wanted. Also, she wasn't sophisticated enough, apparently. So eventually, she actually starts getting picked for roles, and director Elmer Clifton needed a tomboy style, tomboy style actor for a movie called Down to the Sea in Ships. And he recalled seeing Clara in the Motion Picture Classic magazine. That was the contest she won. Sorry, I forgot to mention what the name of the magazine was. And then he sent for her. And this was the break she needed. She needed a director to be willing to cast her in a role and keep that footage in the film. So after doing a few more pictures in New York City, Clara wanted to move to Hollywood because at that point, the major studios were moving to Hollywood. And in 1923, she went on the adventure to the West Coast. So because Clara was so young at this point, she was appointed a chaperone by the studio named Maxine Alton. And while in California, she was also signed to Preferred Pictures. Now, there were many rumors that Clara did not get along with Maxine, and she felt that Maxine was too possessive of her and very overbearing, and eventually Clara would bring her father to Hollywood to be her official chaperone. The very first movie Clara was cast in California was called Maytime, and from that point on, Clara would work continuously. Now, we begin with one of the first scandals. Painted People would prove to be an unpleasant experience for Clara. The movie would star the already well-established, very popular, very well-loved actress, Colleen Moore. I've talked about her in a previous video. And also it would be director Frank Lloyd. So, Frank Lloyd realized that Clara would be the perfect actress to play a flapper. Colleen did not like this, and Also, Clara was very insistent that she wanted to have the lead role in this movie. And she made it very clear to Colleen that she wanted to be the lead. She wanted to replace Colleen, and Colleen was not happy about that. So she went out of her way to make sure that there were no close-ups of her and Clara in scenes together. And this would ignite a movie set rivalry between the two of them, like actually more like a war. And Colleen was not putting up with it, and then made life difficult for Clara on set. So then, fast forward a little bit, Clara was having sinus issues and needed to have minor surgery done to deal with it, and this left like bruising, and I think she had to have some bandages on her face, and shows up on set, and the director is like, okay, this is not going to work. They ended up recasting Clara's role, and I think a combination of how upset Colleen was and then this, the director had enough of her, and which was unfortunate. Throughout Clara's career, she would have made 46 silent films and 11 talkies. I personally feel that Clara would have made a lot more talkies if she hadn't lost her confidence. She was very confident making silent films because there wouldn't be like boom mics and stuff like that. And it is rumored that in the beginning, when the first talkies were starting, she would constantly be distracted by the mics, which caused a lot of takes and just making her lose complete confidence in her acting, and eventually she'd get more comfortable with it, but she didn't end up making that many. And which is unfortunate because the ones that she was in, I thought they were absolutely fabulous movies. And I'm just going to name a few of these movies that she had made throughout her career, both silent and talkies. Maytime in 1923, Daughters of Pleasure in 1924, My Lady of Whims, I love this movie, 1925, The Plastic Age, also 1925, Man Trap in 1926, It in 1927, Children of Divorce, 1927, Wings, also 1927, The Wild Party in 1929, Call Her Savage in 1932, and Hoopla in 1933. Now back to some more scandals. Clara was feisty both on screen and off. And when it came to love, especially. In the 1920s, that wasn't considered very ladylike. Clara's relationships didn't tend to last very long either. Most famously, she dated actors such as Carrie Cooper and Gilbert Roland and director Victor Fleming. There'd be many, many others, but those are probably the ones that really stood out. And something else she was very feisty about and refused to conform or change was Hollywood was trying to create a specific aura of actors, and she refused to follow suit. She could be very crass and raucous and would let loose, and she just didn't want to show decorum, and she definitely did not want to lose her Brooklyn accent. They were teaching a lot of the actors things like deportment and changing their accents, like how to speak a certain way and how to walk a certain way, and Clara was like not having any of it. And it's silent films too, so she didn't feel she had to speak eloquently. Not forward thinking. A lot of them weren't, just to when talkies might happen, right? And she was often shamed for her personality and the way she dressed. Class snobbery was at the height in Hollywood at this point, and I think the harder they pushed her, the harder she pushed back, and she brought a lot of sass. And another open secret about Clara was her money troubles. So, it was a combination of growing up poor and then her father also exploiting her, and she was never taught how to actually manage her own money. And she would very often be left owing creditors a lot of money. And there was also, now this scandal or rumor was probably untrue. Clara loved football. Football was a huge, very popular sport during that time, and not only did she love it, she loved hosting parties for the football players, and because all these football players would be at her home, all of these scandals were, going out there saying she also dated football players too, right? So there was all these scandals that she was like, dating the entire football team, or, doing certain things with the entire football team. And a lot of this was untrue, and a lot of this hurt her, and it definitely hurt her reputation. And there would be a certain writer of Hollywood biographies later, many decades later, I'm not going to name them, that helped to fuel that fire again. And yeah, a lot of people have tried to prove that this was not true at all. And then in 1930 came blackmail. Clara's secretary and probably her most trusted confidant, Daisy DeVoe, found some of Clara's personal records and letters, and she personally thought these were damaging enough to completely ruin Clara, and try to blackmail Clara with this. Clara was having none of it, and she, when she found out that it's like the minute Daisy tried to actually blackmail her, Clara went to the police and took her to court and won, and Daisy DeVoe eventually did end up going to jail, but the trial was an absolute doozy. Daisy aired all of Clara's dirty laundry in court. She put on a huge show, and she was telling tales of Clara's drunkenness, her lurid affairs, her scandalous love letters, and that a lot of very famous people didn't want getting out there. And in the end, like I said, she went to jail, but Clara's career, like, the damage had been done at this point, like major damage, and she lost her contract at Paramount, and she had a really hard time after that finding any work. Eventually she would make a few more films for Fox, but then basically just stopped acting because she couldn't get any more roles. And then, with her star fading, like her acting jobs dried up, her star started to fade, and so did her. Like, Clara just kind of faded from our memories and faded from the front pages, and it was really unfortunate. So in 1931, Clara would marry Rex Bell, and they would settle down on his ranch in Nevada, and they had 2 children together. Unfortunately, it would not be a happy life for her. She socially became withdrawn, depressed, and eventually she wouldn't leave her home. She wouldn't go out to social engagements. And her mental health took a huge nosedive. And then eventually, she would be diagnosed with schizophrenia. And because of that, she went back to California. She was institutionalized. And then when she got out of the sanatorium, she didn't want to go back to Nevada. She didn't want to go back to her family. She wanted just to stay put. So she ended up moving into a bungalow where she would spend the rest of her days. And unfortunately, she would die on September 27th, 1965, at the age of 60. Then, like a phoenix to the flame, many decades later, Clara was rediscovered. I think a huge part of the reason she was rediscovered was because silent cinema became popular again. And people started learning more about her and watching her and loving her, and her star rose again. It would have been nice if she had been alive to see this, but at least, hopefully, some of her family is still alive to see this. And also, in recent years, Taylor Swift wrote a song about her, and filmmaker Gary Huggins went to an auction. He was looking for a very specific cartoon reel, and so he had to buy a lot of film reels, when I mean lot, I mean there'd be like 20 or something. I think, how many was it? Yeah, he had to buy 20 vintage reels, but he bought it for $20, and as he went through it, he discovered a lost Clara Bow short called Pill Pounder. Or sorry, it was a reel. I think it was a short, but the reel was an actual short of her movie, right? I think eventually he ended up selling that reel off, but yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And I love that all of these film festivals are showing, and just, rep theaters are showing her movies again, both silent cinema and the talkies. I know she had a tumultuous life. She did not have an easy life in any way, shape, or form, but she was an incredible actress. And also, we can't end this video without talking about her style. She had some of the cutest style ever. I have a few different favorite outfits of hers I would love to reproduce. So how I'm going to end this video is we're going to do some of my favorite of her outfits. And if you like this type of video, please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe. I would love it if you would subscribe. And without further ado, let's get to those clips of her amazing style. I could talk about Clara all day, every day, and I could make a series of videos about her. But for now, keep watching and stay kitschy.